Thank you, everyone. Well, this morning we stand here as three ministers in the Turnbull government, but we also stand here as three dads, three proud dads, a few dads in the crowd as well, and a few mums too, I suspect. This is, I think, a very positive day for families. What the Minister for Social Services is introduced into the House of Representatives today is a package of reforms that will do two important things. It will firstly ensure that we are producing the savings necessary to support the very important Jobs for Families package that Minister Birmingham will be introducing later in the year, which will provide Australian families with more choice. But the other thing it does is it ensures that the way we are delivering family payments in this country, support for families, is better targeted, that it's more fit for purpose, that we're using the resources that the taxpayers give to ensure families can be best supported and to meet their modern requirements and the modern challenges of families is being best directed to their areas of need. And these are very important changes. The measures today, which were introduced into the House, are a better and fairer family payment package system that more effectively targets family support for today's needs. The package delivers commensurate savings to those that was first put forward in the 14-15 budget, which ensures that we meet the savings objective as well and more significantly meeting the family payment reform and family support objectives of these measures when considered as a package. These measures have been worked up now between the three ministers you see before you, and particularly also in my former role in social services, working with crossbench senators over many, many months to re-engineer the measures that have been put forward in the 14-15 budget. I'll leave it to the Minister for Social Services to run through the various components of that package, but I want to thank the crossbenchers who we continue to work with on these measures and we continue to discuss these measures with. More recently, the opposition has indicated a willingness to engage with us on this in the last week, and we welcome that. Better late than never. They're always welcome to collaborate with the government on good reforms, and we welcome the fact that they are now talking to the government about these changes, and we thank them for that. The welfare reforms that are being enacted here also act on the McClure report, and the McClure report talked about decluttering our welfare system, and this is a further step in that process. You'll remember from the last budget on the pension changes, there was also the reduction in one of the supplement payments. There were 55 supplements a year ago. There are now 54, and we'd be looking to take that number down further with these changes. On fitness for purpose, when the family tax benefit supplement measures were introduced, this was done under the Howard Costello government, and it was done at a time when there was a surplus projected of around $13.6 billion. Now, we know that's not the case now. We are in a very different fiscal environment, and that only underscores the need for us to ensure we are targeting payments and support as best as we possibly can. In the recent meeting between the conveners of the recent Reform Summit and the government, there was a clear point made about the need for taxes to be fit for purpose. There's also a need for payments to be fit for purpose. I'll leave it now, I think, to the Minister for Social Services, Christian Porter, to make comments on the package, and then Simon Birmingham, Senator Birmingham, as the Minister for Education and particular responsibility for childcare, can talk about the Jobs for Families package, because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. This is about delivering the savings. If you want to do something important for childcare, you have to deliver the savings to pay for it. Jenny Macklin said, yeah, you've got to pay for it somehow. Well, this is the somehow. This is the somehow. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you, Treasurer. Well, thanks everyone for being here. I'll confess to you, I've never physically sort of stepped into this room before in Parliament House, so first time here. I'm sure you'll be very gentle with me. And I do bring a very large package, and I think a very important package. What I might do is just two things. First of all, just you've heard the second reading speech, from which I think you can garner all the relevant details, but I might just very briefly recap on some of those details. And as the Treasurer has pointed out, this is two things. I mean, it is clearly a measure designed to slow recurrent expenditure growth inside the family tax benefit system, but also to reapply those savings in a way which we think produces a far better outcome for families and for the society in Australia as a whole by encouraging and enabling workforce participation. So it works very much in conjunction with the childcare reforms that Simon Birmingham now has stewardship of. But if I might summarise the measures in three tranches. The first reform to the family tax benefit, Part B, is about the rates. You will, of course, recall that in the previous measure, which we are now reversing, we had taken down the cut-off age to 6 years. We are now lifting that back up to 13, but we are making certain mitigatory payments because we have considered and listened to some of the issues about the particular difficulties in rearing children at 13 and above that attach particularly to grandparents, but also in single-parent families. So that cut-off age will now be 13, but there will be a mitigatory payment of $1,000 paid for the youngest child under 12 months for young children in families for that first year of life, but also for single parents and grandparents where the child is aged over 13, there is a mitigatory payment of $1,000 to assist them because we recognise that they have particular workforce difficulties. Then second of all, the major area in which we can drive restraint in expenditure, recurrent expenditure growth here, is by looking at the end-of-year supplements. At the present time, the supplements which are paid under the FTB-A system, which is the per-child system, are $726. I won't give you the cents figure, but $726 per child. What we are seeking to do is to phase those payments down and then have them cease in this way. So $726 would be reduced to $600 on 1 July 2016, then $300 on 1 July 2017, and then the following year it would go down to zero. So we would in effect phase down and end the supplements in the FTB-A stream. Equally, the present supplement in the FTB-B stream, which is the per family stream, is $354. Again, in those relevant years, we would take that down in yearly stages from $354 to $300, then to $150, and then down to zero. So to phase out that FTB-B supplement. Now, that is the significant save in this process. That would allow us to reform the FTB Part A fortnightly payments and youth payment fortnightly rates, which would end up being a spend of around $585 million. So those are the mechanics of the changes that we're putting into place. And if I might just now make some general comments about why it is that we believe that this is a superior package to the one that we're replacing. And no equivocation about this. It is a different approach, and it approaches the problem at the end of the system, being the supplements, rather than at the continuation of the system, being the fortnightly payments. So I just want to make a few comments about that. Firstly, as the Treasurer noted, what we are seeking to do here is to link genuine structural reform in the childcare system, and that's what Simon Birmingham will talk about today, with genuine structural reform in the family tax benefit system. And as you'll all know, the McClure report stated that there were 20 payment types, general payment types, and 55 subcategories of payment. And as a new minister, and I've been here for just over 3 weeks, it is an imperative, in my observation, that we continue the process that Scott Morrison, when he was in the position, started of grinding down those 55 sub-payment categories. The system is unworkable. So far, we've managed to get it down to 53. I'm a cricket fan. Getting a half century is great in cricketing terms. It is terrible to be over the half century mark in supplementary payment terms. And what you'll notice in the childcare package, we are replacing 3 very complicated payments with 1 very simple payment if we're successful. Here, we'll be removing 2 supplementary payments and buttressing the fortnightly payments, which is, in our observation, based on everything we've heard during the tumultuous efforts to try and have the first variant of this family tax benefit from the first budget move through the Parliament. We've heard and listened, and we've decided that it is a much better thing to look at the supplements because it's more in the nature of genuine reform. As the Treasurer noted, the supplements were introduced in 2004. And it was a very different world in 2004. As the Treasurer noted, the predicted surplus in the year that these supplements was introduced was going to be $13.6 billion. Shannon Knoll was number 1 on the hits, right, in 2004. A very, very different time.
Still a fan.
Are you?
Still a fan.
You are definitely
He's
need
from
to,
the Shire.
Treasurer, you need to get out more.
Out of the Shire, too.
Never.
It was a very different system, and what had happened is that preceding 2004, there had been a very large number of complaints about a very large number of people who had accumulated debts under the system, largely because of underestimation of their income with respect to the availability of FTB payments, and in some instances, not merely underestimation, but underreporting. This, in large part, was meant to alleviate that problem. Now, what we know is that in 2018-19, the ATO is going to move to a single-touch payroll system. Now, we expect that that will very substantially mitigate the instances of overpayments. What that single-touch payroll system will do is allow live, real-time delivery of data about fortnightly income to both Centrelink and the ATO. So here was a supplementary payment system designed to cope with a certain problem, which problem very much stabilised in recent years, and we expect is really going to be significantly decreased through technological change over the next 2 years. The payment purpose, the reason why it was designed, is being alleviated and will be alleviated. And what we have been looking for is payments inside that excruciatingly large number of 55 that are sensibly no longer fit for purpose. And we believe that this is one of those. If I might put to you all that I think one of the virtues of this approach is that, and again we've listened on this, is that family expenses and family budgets flow in this fortnightly cycle. Things that happen at the end of the year are separate to that fortnightly cycle. So the cost of livings happen at this fortnightly cycle. So we are taking savings from a payment that is no longer fit for purpose in the end of year supplements, transferring it to the childcare package, and then using some part of it to buttress up and increase the fortnightly payment, so that as the daily living cycle and weekly living cycle and fortnightly living cycle goes on, families are better equipped to cope with that sort of rhythmic fortnightly pattern and the real-time demands of fortnightly budgeting. In my own research, in my office's research, and considering this in detail after many options were considered, I'll just read to you one website that we found, which is an accounting website that provides advice to families. It said, if it turns out that you have been overpaid, the supplement will first be used to help offset any overpayment of the FTB or childcare benefit. If you have been underpaid, you'll receive a nice top-up payment along with your supplements. Now, this is the sort of advice that's being given to people about the nature of the supplements, and they're not my words, they're words on a website, but it gives you an indication as to how people still understand quite properly that the purpose of these payments was to mitigate against debt. And that is a problem that we think in relatively swift time we can largely alleviate, which is why we're staggering the payments down. Finally, if I might just say, allied to the increase in the FTBA fortnightly rates, which is around about $10, we will also be increasing the fortnightly youth allowance rate by $10.44, and the same amount increase for DSP recipients at the relevant age of a child. Now, that in itself is a reform because it will align the three payments together, and previously having disalignment amongst three payments amongst the same cohort was causing all sorts of problems and disincentives in terms of people moving in and out of family homes and in and out of circumstances to access payments. So, if I might say in summary, it is unequivocally a different approach. It tackles the problem at the end of the financial cycle. It helps people in the fortnightly, real-time, live family financial cycle. It applies funds that are being saved to the purpose of childcare that Simon Birmingham will now talk about, and it reapplies some of the savings to that fortnightly stressful cycle that families go through.
Simon.
Thanks very much, Christian and Scott. It is very important today that we acknowledge not just the significant changes that are being made in structural terms to our welfare system, but acknowledge that this is an overall package that is supporting significant structural change to how childcare and family support operates across Australia. And my clear message to people is, when looking at the impacts of these changes that Christian and Scott are speaking about, they must be looked at in the context of the childcare changes the government is proposing as well. Because we are delivering the most significant reforms and most significant additional benefits to Australian families in childcare support that Australia has seen. And these changes ensure that as a nation, families will actually have the support they need when they depend upon it to be engaged in the Australian workforce. This package of reforms to the welfare system is integral to funding our $3.5 billion additional support for childcare. That is a $40 billion commitment to childcare and early learning that our government is delivering for Australian families. And it provides, most importantly, more support to Australian families who depend upon childcare, more support to the Australian families who need the support of government to make the bills for childcare stack up for them to participate in the workforce. Australian families earning between $65,000 and $170,000 will on average be around $30 a week better off as a result of the childcare reforms our government is proposing. That is real money that helps them to pay for childcare and helps them to participate in the workforce. That means they're getting more assistance to be participants in the workforce. Some 240,000 Australian families are estimated to increase their workforce participation and involvement as a result of the reforms. 38,000 of those families are jobless homes, where neither partner or in a single parent case, they are not participants in the workforce. So by making childcare support more generous and simpler and more accessible, more people will get into the workforce and more Australian children will have role models of working parents that help set them up for their lives in the future. It is a significantly simpler system that is being delivered in childcare as well, as Christian acknowledged, taking 3 complicated different childcare payments and turning them into one single payment, the childcare subsidy that will be available to Australians. These types of reforms are really directed at making sure our systems in government work as simply and efficiently and effectively as possible, that Australian families are able to interact and engage with them in a simple way and understand how to access them, but that of course they ultimately are delivering the public policy benefits that we want to see, which is support for families who need it, where and when they need it, support that helps those families participate in the workforce, support that is targeted to those who are most in need. And all of these measures brought together deliver that outcome, which is why I urge Australians and the members of the press gallery here to make sure that in looking at the package of measures in relation to welfare reform and family tax reform today, they look at it as an integrated package that brings together the childcare reforms as well, which when put together deliver substantial benefits to help many, many Australian families who rely upon our childcare system for their workforce participation.
Thanks, Simon.
Just clarify, so that the revamp of all these measures remains budget neutral insofar as it's going to achieve the same saving.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Could you tell us what that saving is, what the new forward estimate?
Well, the original package, when you update it, I mean, when it was introduced in 14-15, was delivering over a 4-year period. This is what is the cost of the reversal. So this is what I have to be clear about. We are actually reversing out all of the 14-15 measures that related to family tax benefits as a result of what Mr Porter has introduced today into the House as Social Services Minister. So they're all going out, and that is a reversal of saving of some $3.7 billion over that period. And what we're able to introduce is additional revenue measures that total some $2.4 billion in relation to those measures that he's introduced. But I would also note that as a result of other measures that we introduced recently on the family daycare child swapping measures, that was raising an additional $930 million over the budget and forward estimates, which takes us up to 3.362 over the forwards. Now, that is what it is over the budget and forwards. But with the phasing of those arrangements, some of these measures kick in earlier, some of them kick in later. When you get beyond the forwards, that's when you start to get complete parity. Now, I said it was largely in the same ballpark, and when you're talking in the billions, there's a few hundred million that has to continue to be resolved in terms of how we go forward with MyEFO and the budget, and we're confident we can address those measures. There are other measures that are still before the Senate in terms of the large family supplement and the portability arrangements on family tax benefit. Together, those measures are around $215 million over the budget and forward. So this is largely a commensurate saving with the original budget measure. And that has always been the plan because, as Jenny Macklin said, the childcare package has to be paid for somehow. There is no free money when it comes to paying for childcare, and we've been very appreciative of the universal support for the Jobs for Families package. And I'm assuming that extends to the opposition. They've been very supportive of it. But without this package, you can't pay for the Jobs for Families package. And if Labor is supporting the Jobs for Families package, then they need to announce the saves that are going to pay for it.
If this package is so good, why didn't you get it right the first time?
Well, we've listened, we've revised it, we've re-engineered it, and I think the government has worked collaboratively with the crossbench, which all the team here has done. And I think it should be a positive thing that where a government has been, in the first instance, the measures were put forward to deliver savings. These measures deliver, I think, system improvement, more effective, more efficient delivery of payments. It isn't just about the saves, it's about actually delivering a better welfare system. It's about delivering a better system of family payments, which is targeting it. You know, Australians expect us to use the money they give us wisely and to target to the need. They don't expect us to put cash splashes out there at the end of each year. They expect us to put family support payments to work, and more Australian families know that they need to work more to make sure that they can deal with rising costs of living. And one of the impediments of families working more has been the unaffordable costs of childcare. I mean, the percentage of two-income families today is a lot higher than it used to be, particularly when they're saving to buy a house and trying to buy a house. They know that both parents have got to work. Now, we've got to remove the impediments to them being able to be in the workforce. And that's what this childcare package does. It doesn't just help them with the cost of childcare, it helps them earn more to deal with all the bills and the other objectives and aspirations they have for their family.
When the savings in this announcement are set against the outlays on the families package, is there anything left over to improve the budget deficit? Can you say anything about how much that would be and when it would kick in?
Over the budgets and forwards, this largely washes its face when it comes to the childcare package and the other measures that we have and so on. Once we move beyond the budget and forwards, then you see a contribution to the bottom line over time. And I think that's very consistent with the approach we're taking to the budget. I noted the obvious yesterday that the budget will be in surplus when expenditure is less than revenue. And that means you just keep working towards that outcome, and we will get to that outcome, but we will do it in a way which continues to maintain support and strength and growth in the economy, and support and strength and growth for jobs. And I think that's what Australians would expect us to keep a fine balance on.
Mr. Porter, I understand the argument that swings and roundabouts. What you lose in family payments, you pick up in childcare, as Minister Birmingham articulated. But a lot of families don't use childcare, but they will lose money from family payments. How many families will be worse off because of these changes?
We'll distribute the breakdown data on that, and as you'll appreciate, there's some complication to it. But if I can say in broad terms, there's one roundabout and two swings here. So if the roundabout is where we make a save, that is in the end of year supplement. But the two swings are that there is a $10 odd increase to the regularised payment under FTB-A, and the families who are receiving childcare will be very significantly better off under the package that we hope to pass. So your point is noted, but I'd say that it's mitigated by the fact that a lot of the FTB families are also in the childcare market, but that is not the only benefit. There is a very considerable spend here, over $500 million, to increase that base rate of the FTB-A. And as I put earlier, the approach that we've taken is that if the payment is properly designed to assist families with that regularised budget cycle, then any generosity is much better pitched at that regularised budget cycle, whereas this end-of-year payment has been used to mitigate debts for some people, although that number has steadied and will decrease, and for other people it is a end-of-year benefit which is separate to that regularised budget cycle. And let me say to you that a payment, an end-of-year supplement designed to help people mitigate a debt, is now being paid to an overwhelming majority of people who don't have any debt. So we have looked into the system for payments that are no longer fit for purpose. So point noted, but I think it can very much be overstated by virtue of the fact that there is a correlation between the families.
But on this is the other point. What this package does is it enlarges the pie for families by helping and supporting families to be able to work more. If you're working more, you'll be better off on this package. You will be better off. If you're working more, a day a week more, half a day a week more, you'll be better off under this package. And I think that's an important point. The other one, particularly for stay-at-home mums, or stay-at-home dads for that matter, for those who have infants less than 12 months, they will actually be better off on every single scenario here. They will be better off because we're increasing the payment for those under 12 months on top of what is already there, and the increase to the base payment, as Christian has said, by an additional $1,000. We've also recognised that for children above the age of 13 and above who are in single parent families or where the grandparent is the custodian, that their needs are also being recognised in a continuing payment as well.
Families with two parents and teenage kids, they are worse off. They lose their
Not if people are working more. Remember, under the previous government, what they did is, in addition to having $15 billion worth of savings put through the family tax benefit system by adjusting thresholds and freezing payments and doing all of the things that they've accused this government of doing as being abhorrent, they did all of those things when they were in government. The other thing they did is they made the changes to parenting payments, you'll recall, when they said when a child turned 6, that you went off to the parenting payment and you had to go on to New Start. And the previous government's rationale for that was when your child turns 6, you can go into the workforce. Now, when this measure was first introduced, it applied exactly the same principle as the previous government. Now, the opposition rejected that. They can explain the difference between those two situations. What we're saying is when your child now turns 13, that there is the opportunity for people to seek to be in the workforce at that point, and when you're in the workforce, working a day a week, you'll be better off under this package.
Jenny Macklin on radio this morning seemed amenable to most of this without sort of locking her in, but she expressed concern about...
Do you have the power to lock her in?
No, but she did express concern about one element, and that was the reducing the payments for single parents and grandparents with teenage kids. Is this a package, a whole thing? You're not going to cherry pick? Like, does the Parliament have to pass the whole thing or nothing?
Well, I mean, this package is the result of a range of negotiations. And the question was asked earlier, why a new package? Well, I mean, pragmatism, I think, is the answer to that. And to note that there's a new package is not to be, I think, able to fairly characterise the old package as unreasonable. But we have met with difficulties in having the old package negotiated through the Senate. And there's a lovely motto for the US Marines: improvise, adapt and overcome. And that's what this package represents. And if there's, negotiations that are ongoing, we will be good US Marines in the conduct of those negotiations.
Some of it is negotiable, you still...
Well, look, we'll continue the discussions, and as well as with the crossbench. I mean, the opposition hasn't indicated yet their support for this, and that's a matter for them. But as I said before, if they don't support this package, then they can't actually go to an election and tell the Australian people they're able to provide greater and more affordable childcare. That's why these two things are linked, because they can't afford it. But we will continue to talk to the opposition. We'll continue to talk to the crossbench. Those discussions have been going on since May, so it's been, and what we've got here today is the product of that collaboration. So, yeah, it's a better package. It's a better package. It's a better offer, and it also achieves the government's savings objectives. So we haven't had to walk away from that, and nor would we, because as a government we know you've got to pay for what you spend, and that's a very important principle. I've got time for one more and then...
Mr Porter, how confident are you that that problem of overpayments, which leads to those end-of-year debts, can be eliminated? And if it can't be eliminated because of software problems or whatever, that's going to leave a lot of people in trouble, isn't it?
Well, eliminate is a very strong word. I don't think that any rational government is going to be able to suggest that they can completely eliminate a problem. But I would say that we are talking about a very quantum shift in how we do business. And this feeds into the notion of the WIPIT, for Devo fans, the Welfare Payment Infrastructure Transformation Project, right? So the platforms that we have been operating and which the previous government put no effort or money into fixing are arcane. They are really very poor. We're investing considerable funds into re-engineering those platforms. Part of that is the single payroll system. So eliminate, no, very substantially mitigate against a problem that in the past was was fair to warrant measures? I think the answer to that is yes. Like, I'm very confident that we will substantially eat into this problem of overpayments.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, I need to clarify one thing that's very important. Despite my great affection for Shannon Knoll as a fellow Shire resident, I remain Tina Arena's #1 fan in this parliament. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.